Welcome to the Hot Sauce. This is Angel Planels, a registered dietitian nutritionist in Seattle, Washington. I am currently at 267 subscribers, and the goal is to make it to 300, so do me a favor and like, comment, and subscribe. You can also catch this, previous, and future episodes on your favorite podcasting platform. Let's get right into it. Today, we are going to feature Drew Hemler, a registered dietitian nutritionist that resides in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. All right, well, welcome back to the Hot Sauce. Today, I have Drew Hemler. He is an internationally accredited, award-winning registered dietitian with more than 15 years of collective experience serving as a university lecturer, consultant, and advisor, a national speaker, and a dietetics mentor. Hey, he's got a lot of things going on here. I got the resume going. But what I'm going to do is we're going to put Drew in the hot seat here. So he's on the big screen. And Drew, what I'd like you to do is introduce yourself and your journey into the profession, talk about what inspired you to join, where you went to school, your internship, and what jobs you're doing. So the floor is yours. Go.
Okay. Thank you for having me, and good morning again. Okay, so my name's Drew. My gosh, so just a way back. I'm originally from the Syracuse, Central New York area, and now I reside in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. I've lived here for about 8 years, been a citizen for about 5 years, and absolutely have loved the journey from even before I went to school to pursue dietetics till now, as you had said, working in several different areas, wearing many different hats. And yes, I do sleep. But really my inspiration to get involved in dietetics started, which I didn't really know, maybe like subconscious messaging, was when I was a child and I was in the kitchen with my mom. She taught me how to cook. We have a Ukrainian background, and we had some Polish traditions growing up. We had Ukrainian Christmas with like a bunch of small gifts at my mom's side of the family, but we were always in the kitchen together. And she taught me how to make pierogi. Polish or Ukrainian pierogi. They will fight about whose pierogi is better, but my mom taught me how to make pierogi. And she also taught me how to make a lot of dishes around the holidays, maybe more like North American standard, like those chocolate chip cookies, or some European style like almond roca. But my love for food and what turned out to be a passion in dietetics started at the ripe age of like 2 or 3 or 4 in the kitchen with my mom. And then fast forward, my mom dealt with a lot of health issues. She lived with breast cancer on and off for well over a decade, went through multiple treatments. I was there for pretty much all of it, was by her side during treatments. And she really started exploring the power of nutrition and health. And that instilled in me this awakening, this realization, kind of like my aha moment with the connection between food, nutrition, and health. Not only nutrition itself, but the social aspect of it, and mental health and overall health itself. And then I was kind of experimenting with dietary patterns, my cousin and I. I look back and think about that little year or two of journey, and it looked some cringe moments as we were watching all of the documentaries and believed everything that we saw, right? Because I didn't understand how to critically evaluate information through a lens of real authority, substantiated training and expertise behind food science and nutrition. But so my mom kind of instilled it to me in a young age, and then was exploring food and nutrition. Then I applied it to myself after she had passed with a cousin of mine, and we really saw like extraordinary results in our blood work. I dropped a lot of weight. I was running more than I ever have. I had like limitless energy at the time. Also, I was very young, and that's part of it too. But so I found this passion. I had these aha moments with my mom, and then applying that to myself. And I just knew I wanted to play around with food and help other people. Funny story, I signed up for a dietetics program. I lived in Central New York at the time, and this dietetics program I was eyeing was in Buffalo, which I ended up going to. But I didn't know that it was actually a dietetics program. I didn't even know what a dietitian was. I just knew I wanted to work with people and in food and nutrition, and help them help them along their health goals with it. So packed up all of my stuff. I am what is called a second career dietitian. So I previously worked in marketing and merchandising, which fast forward comes into a lot of help in the field of dietetics. But I packed up and moved to Buffalo, New York, which was like, 3.5 hours from where I was born and raised, and then worked in my previous career and then joined this program. So enter Buffalo, New York. This, to paint a picture, was 2012. The city actually got $1 billion initiative, and I was there as I was like flourishing and living my aha moment and pursuing my passion. Buffalo was regenerating and rebuilding all around me. It was a very unique experience. So I joined a dietetics program, a didactic program, undergraduate. So this was 2012 in Buffalo at Buffalo State College, what's now known as Buffalo State University. So I enrolled in a DPD, didactic program, where I completed the first 2 years. And then we had the opportunity to apply for what was known as a coordinated program, where they mold together your didactic, that classroom learning, and then they provide those placements for you versus like an independent kind of program that some people have to seek. So I was accepted into the program. Luckily, there was a spot for like 16 of us, and I was one of them that made the cut, feeling blessed at that moment, so excited. And so it was a combined classroom learning with a lot of different practicum experiences. We started small, doing, I think, like 5 to 10 hours a week, and working our way up to 40 hours per week by the time we had graduated, so that we had met all those requirements so that we could take that national dietetic exam. But in that coordinated program, so that practicum learning, the typical in most programs, we had to do a bunch of hours in clinical work. We had to do a bunch of hours in food service. We had to do a bunch in community. But there was this one particular course that I think was a game changer for me. And I'm so fortunate that my program had this. It was a senior practicum where we could go wherever we wanted to. And in that, I knew I wanted to somehow combine my previous experience in marketing and merchandising. I did a lot actually in grocery retail with major grocery chains, helping them with schematics and planograms. Funny thinking about it now, some of the things that we try to help our clients and communities navigate while in the grocery store, I was the one putting those in place to try to increase impulse sales. So I knew that I wanted to combine those worlds, and I applied to so many places. I mean, for the senior practicum, you have to find a place, and you're going to get rejections because dietitians are busy. They don't have oversight to host you. They don't even have the kind of program, or they don't have an affiliation with the university. Rejection. And finally, I said, well, let me try this. Let me try some places in Toronto. I knew about Toronto a little bit. I visited a couple times because my partner, now 13 years, was living in Toronto and had introduced me to the city. So I found one of Canada's largest grocery retail chains called Loblaws. I think they used to be in the States for a little bit. They're the largest, they're a mega corporation here in Canada, and they own a lot of different subsidiaries and franchises. But I nailed that. I got the internship there. So I all of a sudden was an internship in retail dietetics, which was the coolest experience I've ever had in my life. So I was, as a student, doing my classroom learning. And then for a month or 6 weeks, this was the only practicum experience that I had to do because I had to do 40 hours a week. And at the same time, I was working at a hospital. As my professors had told me earlier on, get a job in a hospital, get a job in food service, get a job in a food setting so that you have that experience and can hit the ground running once you gain that RD credential. And you already have more of this experience, which helps you with your practicums. So I was working at a hospital in Buffalo, New York. So this is what it looked like during that practicum. I had to be in the hospital during the weekend, and I had to work, I think 20 hours it was. 16 to 20 hours to keep my job. So I did that Saturdays and Sundays. And then Sundays, go drive a few hours over to Toronto, stay with my partner, and then work 40 hours doing my practicum work at Loblaws as a retail dietitian intern. So it was exhausting. But during that time, I was on the floor helping people navigate the aisles. Funny, helping them ignore the things that I had helped in my previous career. helping them try to impulse buy things, steering them away from it now, which is kind of funny, kind of ironic. Hosting teaching kitchen events, from like kids having birthday parties to adults wanting to learn about the Mediterranean diet. Back on the floor to do food demos, to promote maybe a certain product that's on sale that can be really implemented throughout several different food cultures and traditions, to show, because Toronto's a very diverse city. In fact, I think it's one of the most diverse cities in the world. And then heading to the office after a food demo to go see a customer that wants a half an hour consult on personalizing their health journey through food and nutrition. So it's just made this combination of helping people navigate retail and merchandising in the store, doing demos of food, hosting teaching kitchens, and providing one-on-one counseling, and sometimes doing grocery tours as well, which I absolutely loved with our like 3rd and 4th and 5th graders that we had all the time. So it's kind of like this amalgamation of everything I could have thought that I ever wanted to do with food and nutrition. And you're right at the point of decision making, which is at that grocery store. So that was a really eye-opening experience for me and really helped pave the way, I think, in many ways, for when I graduated. So this was a 4-year program. So the didactic was 2-year, then the coordinated was 2-year, and then you graduate, and you get that piece of paper from the university that says, hey, you can take the RD exam. So I did. Studied a lot. Sometimes I think I studied too hard, and friends and colleagues and peers really wanted to rip my head off, because I'm like, no, you're not sleeping, we're studying. No, you're not going to go do that fun thing, we're studying. I pulled everybody and anybody that I could study. So studied for 4 months, took the RD exam in August of 2016, became a registered dietitian. Another wonderful moment in life. So finally I'm a dietitian now. And what do you do? Like, where do you start? Where do you go? Well, I had a bit of experience in practicum, which I could leverage. Those connections that I made with dietitians in clinical and food service and community, retail in Toronto. And I met a bunch of Toronto dietitians that way, but that's in a different country. And then experiences I had on campus. Something I didn't mention, that when I was a student, I started a LLC, so I formed a business entity because I began providing services for food product clients. That's a different story. I could talk about this forever. But I started small businesses in the Buffalo area, develop products, and then link them with brokers so that they can get onto main grocery store shelves and then eventually become national. I had a bunch of connections from my previous career in merchandising and marketing, especially in the grocery and retail sectors. So I switched that business entity to a PLLC, a professional limited liability company, and started my own private practice. And it was mostly virtual, thinking ahead to when the pandemic happened. It really helped having that previous virtual experience. But I started seeing clients one-on-one. I saw couples, I saw families, mostly virtual, but sometimes in person if appropriate, if the place and space allowed for it. And once I graduated and became a dietitian, I was offered a job at the university that I was a student at. So all of a sudden the student became the teacher, which was a very, 180 degree moment. So my faculty or my professors now became my colleagues, which was a wild experience. So I started teaching in academia, had a private practice, and something told me to move to Canada to be with my partner. So I pursued that. Side note, if you're ever pursuing moving to a different country, it's a lot of work. It's not as simple as people think. But there's a lot of paperwork, a lot of proving yourself, especially when moving to Canada. You kind of get put into a point system. You become a number, really, to see how worthy you are to contribute to Canadian society. So I went through that process and became a dietitian in Canada. They took all of my US education, luckily. So I just had to take the Canadian Dietetic Registration exam, the CDRE. And then I moved to Canada in 2017. I'll actually never forget the date, because there is this US event called the Food and Nutrition Conference and Expo, and that year was in Chicago. You might remember, actually, in Chicago. It was like the most beautiful weather in 2017 in Chicago.
Mm-hmm. It was the 100-year fancy. It was great.
Yeah, yes, exactly. That's why it was in Chicago, right? Because they're headquarters. So I'll never forget that, because when I came back and I flew into Canada, that was my permanent residency landing, just this term that says it's the first time you're entering the country as a permanent resident. There's like a little special event that happens at the customs when you land. They sign a document, they give you, you say an oath. It was a really special moment, but I'll never forget because it was connected to this marker in the US coming from this wonderful conference, their 100-year anniversary, and then starting this new residency in Canada. So that the year was 2017 in Canada. And then since I came to Canada, I maintained my work in academia, teaching online courses, keeping my very small private practice, having some clients for 10 years, doing food product consulting still to this day. I have one of my first clients, which is a kind of to jump back to being in the kitchen and my mom teaching me how to make pierogi. One of my first food product consulting clients is a pierogi company based in Buffalo called Babcia's Pierogi. Still have that client now 12 or 13 years later. Pretty wild. And then once I moved to Canada, I started a little small private practice here. I got involved with our regulatory agency here, which is a whole separate conversation. It's kind of wild to see how US is regulated differently than the States in the profession of dietetics. But I got involved with our regulatory agency here, consulting and providing some services with them. What else? I slowly got involved in telehealth with some major organizations here. That are some of Canada's largest telecommunications organizations that got into telehealth because they saw how the opportunity to help people, and became a professional practice leader with them, helping their dietitians stay up to date with critical issues, medical nutrition therapy, even just admin and charting type of regulations and best practices, because they didn't have a lot of guidance to begin with when they started in telehealth. And that's pretty much where I'm at today. Okay. Other than over the course of a few years getting involved in the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics on a national level, which has been quite a journey for the last 3 years, which is how I met you, really.
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So that was a lot. I covered a lot, but it was like started in Syracuse, went to Buffalo to pursue dietetics, started a bunch of things, hit the ground running, moved to Toronto, and then still am involved in a lot of areas, places, and spaces.
I think you made a comment about you do sleep, and the same here. I do sleep.
I do. Yeah, I do. But I can't, I can't help it. And other people will say this is when you find what you love to do, it doesn't always feel like work.
Right.
So I'm fortunate. I'm really happy to have found the profession of dietetics and find all these communities, especially in volunteering spaces. You can relate to this. Like, you find a family, really. So.
Definitely. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. I really enjoyed the journey there. It was it's interesting because I think as people talk, I'm kind of going through my journey, and all the other people that I've interviewed, I can see their journeys, and everyone's unique and awesome stories. So thank you for sharing. Appreciate that.
You're welcome. And that's probably only half of it, but I gotta keep it. I gotta narrow it down to some. Because I could talk about, I'll probably bring up volunteering. And
that'll be, and I would tell you that can come at the end. So let me just close this door one sec. I'll cut this. Let me just close the door in case my dog decides to barge through. I'm
sure.
like,
the dog can be a guest on the podcast.
Yeah, I was like, oh God, the door's open, and then the dog's gonna barge through and will start yapping at me. All right, so the second question is, what has been the most enlightening and humbling aspect of being in the education world, or frankly, any part of the dietetics profession that you've been in?
Enlightening. I think maybe it's another aha moment I had. So something I didn't even mention. Before my career in marketing and merchandising, I went to school. I was one of the kids where I didn't know what I wanted to do. And my parents are like, but you're going to college. So I had to pick a focus, and I am at heart an artist. So in high school, that was my jam. So I went and completed a 2-year degree an associate's degree in studio art and design. And flash forward to becoming a dietitian, part of me thought that I was losing that part of myself in being an artist, because I was going to like the science side, the critical analytical, the putting the pieces together, being an investigator, and then exploring the person and educating the person. And in taking, which I didn't mention, I took a graduate degree in adult education, because during my undergrad, I felt like I didn't have enough education training, because one of the major roles as a dietitian is being an educator. Now, if I couldn't educate well, then what am I doing in this profession? But I had one of those aha moments where it was like, I'm not actually losing the artist in me. And if anything, I am really widening my artistic application as an educator, because man, there are a million ways that you can teach something, right? And you're creating those opportunities. So in essence, and I feel strongly about this, that dietitians or educators of any kind are artists, because they're creating these educational experiences that have an impact on the clients and communities that they serve. And now I actually give some workshops and talks about the art and science of education. So like putting the scientific aspect of it, the instructional design, the systematic process of building effective and efficient education with your spin, your art, your unique point of view, giving it that pizzazz that it needs to help reach people truly. So that was my enlightening experience. Is I didn't have to lose being an artist. I actually gained a lot, or it's just another outlet for me to be an artist, is providing nutrition education in different places and spaces and with different people.
Right. What about a humbling aspect?
Oh, a humbling aspect. Sometimes you might find yourself in places that you're not necessarily equipped. But as dietitians, I think most people have experienced this, where, sometimes you're looking up a place in the world with a client that they come from this country, and I've never heard of the country. And I have to Google in the office really quick before I go and see the person. Or when I'm trying to plan an educational experience for a group that I don't know much about, and maybe I can gather some data through a survey, but once you're there, sometimes it can be a humbling experience, because you thought you knew, but you don't. And as much as we're educators, our client, education is a two-way street most of the time. Our audiences teach us things, and sometimes right on the spot. And I'll never forget a community event I had here in Toronto, right at I don't want to compare it, but it's kind of like the Times Square of New York. It's called Dundas. Well, no longer called Dundas Square, but it's like a major intersection in Toronto where all of the signs are and shopping and stuff. But we had an event there, a Pan-American Food and Music Festival event, Canada's largest multicultural event. And I was the dietitian there. And, I made some generalizations, and I quickly was corrected. It was a very humbling experience. So it goes to tell you to never make assumptions, or, never make generalizations, especially among a crowd of there must have been people from 60 different countries in that crowd. And
wow,
I tried my best, but it was a very humbling experience to learn, oh, no, that's not, this isn't a cultural staple among us, or this isn't a dietary pattern, a usual dietary pattern. So that was a humbling experience to be corrected right on the spot amidst hundreds of people.
I'm sure. Wow. Okay. Well, thank you for sharing. All right. So next question. If you could do it all over again in your career, what would you change, and what would you keep the same?
What would I change? Okay. Now being a dietitian for almost 10 years now, as a student, something I would have changed was building that network a bit more as a student. Something that I realized within the first 5 years after being out of university, the amount of resources that you have in front of you while you're at university, the student associations, the faculty that connect you and have those connections to the outside dietetics world. Because, as a student, you kind of feel like you're in a bubble a little bit, and maybe you're a little shy or intimidated and scared, but you have access to all these resources. And I wish, and I thought I was pretty good at building a network, but that was among my peers really, and maybe a couple of community partners. But I wish I had built that network, or that those connections a bit more, so that when I had graduated, maybe I had even more opportunities to choose from, because maybe when I graduated, I didn't feel like I had all the opportunities in the world. I just had what I knew and had experience with. So yeah, if there's something that I could change, it would be I would have built a network a bit deeper and more broad. And something to stay the same. Other than that, to be honest, everything I would keep the same, because even like that humbling moment, which, was really kind of embarrassing a little bit, but I learned from it. All the mistakes that I made in any place or space, I learned from. I don't know if I think I would keep everything exactly the same, because maybe that's a little corny, but I am who I am because of my experiences, and I wouldn't change it for anything. Yeah.
Not at all. It's not at all corny. Frankly, I misphrased it, because some people, I forgot, I should have said, would you change anything or would you keep it the same? So my apologies.
Okay.
But you did great, because, frankly, it would be the same for me or for most people. It's like our journey is unique to us, and as we journey through, it kind of builds us as we go. So no, great. Before I go to the next question,
Sure.
I guess I know you wanted to talk about volunteering. So I guess if you wanted to kind of talk about that, why don't you jump into that before we do the final two questions?
Okay.
So go for it.
Great catch. Wow, I could give a 3-hour workshop on this, but I'll try to keep it quick. So when I was a student, and in going back to, I wish I had built a more deep and more wide network. Now, what I'm about to say may sound contradictory, because I am who I am and everyone's different, but I feel like I could have done more with that and utilized it when I became a dietitian. But when I was a student, and I think this is because of my previous career, and I was in some medium to higher management positions even as a young age. When I became a student, I wanted to lead. We were with a lot of traditional students who are, dietetics can be intimidating. The courses are tough. So I wanted to help my community of peers, because we're all into this together, and nobody knows the dietetic program experience like other dietetic program students. Sometimes it's traumatizing. So I wanted to lead, and so I built a network there. Somebody had introduced me to like a state or a regional or district affiliate of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, which again, I didn't even know what the academy was. And they introduced me to the Western New York one. It really was, our main population within that district was Buffalo, New York. And I found a community there of like-minded people. Yeah, a little shy in being introduced to these people that like worked for the FDA and were program directors and worked for the state, all these major titles that these people held. And I was a little intimidated. But then I finally realized they're just humans trying to survive life like the rest of us. But I found a space there, a really loving, caring space. Dietitians just want to constantly help each other, including our own people. But so I got involved right there with Western New York, with like helping plan an annual event. Putting together, I had the idea of like, we need to promote dietitians and technicians in Western New York, because people don't even know what a dietitian is, I realized as I was doing a lot of coursework. So we created a promotional video, and I led that project. So that helped me like flex some muscles that I had in my previous career to help this new profession that I had had a growing passion for. So funny story, actually. I went to one of the annual awards meetings, and previously one of my professors, just like an adjunct professor that was teaching a course, had noticed something in me, like, oh, Drew likes to lead, or Drew likes to problem solve or help people like make connections. And she asked me a couple times, hey, are you interested in this in the state level? I was like, ooh, I'm a student. Practicums are coming up. This is going to be kind of bonkers. Let me think about it. And then fast forward to this meeting. This woman stands up in front of everybody. She was at the time the president of the New York State Academy. And she goes, and introducing our new communications editor, Drew Hemler. And in that moment, I froze. I must have turned red or white. I don't know which one. And just stood up, and I go, okay, this is happening, whether I like it or not. but thinking in retrospect, that was the best thing that could have happened to me. Was she like gave me the push, maybe not in the best way, but it's funny now. I can look at it with humor now. But she pushed me to take that volunteer role because she knew what I could do. She knew like I could help the profession in that way, or on the state level. So then I started volunteering at the state level. Communications editor, social media manager, chaired a conference, which is maybe another humbling experience because, man, it takes a village. And then, so that was about 4 or 5 years, both during my undergrad and then after my graduation up until like 2019, 2020. So I was living in Canada at this point and volunteering remotely. You can do stuff from anywhere now. And then I got involved at the national level and started working with the electronic nutrition care process terminology platform, looking at it through a user experience design and the content, and then having an education background, making sure how things were stated made sense, because a lot of educators use it to teach their students about the nutrition care process, looking at the case studies, making sure they make sense in context of whatever is being taught. And then I got involved. The next role from there was the Commission on Dietetic Registration. They have a panel that oversees appeals. So if you can't complete those 75 hours of continuing education within a 5-year, maybe because life happens, you can file an appeal. Maybe it's financial, medical, political, natural disasters, all these kind of hardships. And then we look at those cases and approve or reject or try to remediate in some way. And then from there, I was introduced to the Academy's Center for Lifelong Learning, specifically their Committee for Lifelong Learning, which just think the Food and Nutrition Conference and Expo, which is the world's largest event for nutrition experts. We bring in like 6,000, I think upwards of like 15,000 some years. I was on that committee and still am on that committee with 13 other people that really help represent different places and spaces in dietetics. We come together with Academy staff and we we review hundreds of proposals. So people who want to speak at this conference to talk about the latest and greatest evidence, projects, initiatives, trends, we look at those proposals and say yay or nay, and then look at the programming and fill the gaps, knowing what we know from our respective experiences. We know maybe there's gaps in the education and we help fill them by making those sessions. So then I was working on that committee this is my 3rd year and it's my last year, sadly. But once I served in that committee, I met so many people that I had been sitting in awe of for a decade from when I was a student. Like these are stars in my eyes in the dietetics profession. I'd seen them on stage. I'd seen them as keynotes. I'd see them working with brands or food commodities, really pushing evidence-based nutrition messaging. And I got to meet them. And that was it's been a wild ride for the last 3 years being on that committee. So here I am. And most recently, I was, again, people seeing things in you that maybe you don't always see in yourself. Somebody saying, hey, Drew, I think you can make an impact in a bigger way or in a broader way. I think you should consider the Academy elections, serving in an elected role. And I said, I never considered that, but hearing it from you, maybe I'll consider it. So I thought about it and I made the decision to do it. And I was recently elected into the Academy's nominating committee. So basically people who put forth nominations and are interested in an elected position, this committee will oversee those applications. Some require interviews. Sometimes we will try to get people to apply, to promote, using our networks and just knowing the profession overall. So I'll be starting that position in a few months. And here I am, having volunteered for about over 12 years for the Academy, from local to state and now national. And in many ways in the national aspect, it's global volunteering. So there's a place and space for everybody within the profession of dietetics. I always say this at all of the speaking engagements I go to when I'm in front of dietitians and dietetic technicians and students, is if you are an Academy member and you something doesn't feel right, something doesn't sit right with you, you've experienced something that's, you feel is suboptimal or could be improved. And I frame it this way: if you find something to complain about in the academy, there's a space for you at the academy to help improve that process or that system or the resources that are pulled in. So if you can complain about the academy, we want you at the academy.
Very good. Very good.
That was my
Awesome.
little plug for the academy.
Okay. Thank you for sharing. All right. So next question. We have 2 more to go. What does the future hold for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I usually, maybe in my previous career, I would say, oh, I know I'm going to be doing this, that, and the other, and these are my steps to get there. But in the profession of dietetics and in context of the year 2025, I don't know. But I do know that I will always be involved in, say, supporting clients and communities through food and nutrition education or ancillary type of services. I do plan to keep growing my impact, whether that is working with telehealth teams, educating clients and communities at events or through private practice, providing consulting services through a lens of communication or strategic planning. But growing it in some way so that I have a more substantial impact. So that might be expanding services. That might be working with different teams. That might be getting involved in different organizations or seeking higher level positions. But if it has to do with food and nutrition, I know I'm all about it. Or if it's supporting people who work in food and nutrition, I'm all about it. So I can't give an answer to I know what my life's going to be like in 5 years, which is, to be honest, quite a terrible response, especially if it's like a job interview. You never want to say that. But I'm
No,
not in
you're
that
good.
place.
You're good. You're good.
But I don't know. And that's part of, going back to, say, if students are listening to this, know when to say yes to opportunities, take the opportunities to explore, be a tumbleweed, like explore clinical, explore food service, community, private practice, do it all. So you know what speaks most to you. Don't kind of pigeonhole yourself into something because you feel like that's what other people are doing. There's a place and space for everybody in dietetics. It doesn't have to be a competition either. If anything, support your colleagues that are in the same spaces as you and you can grow together. Yeah, but I don't know where it's going to be. As long as I'm supporting dietitians and supporting clients and communities, I'll be there.
Okay, awesome. Well, you kind of jumped into the final question, so I guess let's rephrase it
Sure.
because you went to the words of wisdom. So, if you were to have something, 60 seconds, whatever, to
Mhm.
kind of, these are usually clipped. So, whatever you can think of are great words of wisdom for the next generation of dietitians. You did just drop one right before you started, right before I got to it. So, think about it, and yeah, any words of wisdom for the next generation of RDs.
Yeah. Yes, my elevator pitch would be comfortable with being uncomfortable, number one, because those are the places where you grow, truly. Sometimes it's a very humbling experience, like I talked about a previous experience. Sometimes it's it's embarrassing, but those uncomfortable situations truly are where you grow. It might not feel like it in the moment, but you'll learn so much from them afterwards. So be comfortable with being uncomfortable. And next, build adaptation and flexibility, skills in adaptation and flexibility, because it's 2025. The world is ever changing. We've seen a overhaul with tech and AI coming up. Dietitians need to be on board with that, or else somebody's going to replace them that knows AI. So have that lens of being able to be flexible and adaptable to whatever, because resources change constantly. Your human team changes. The people that are in your corner or the people that are your co-employees, that changes constantly. So be comfortable with that too. Constantly having to switch things. And something that I find that really helps with that is coming back to the reminder of your why. Why do you do what you do? You do it because you want to help people. You do it because you want to help communities through food and nutrition. So always think about that, no matter how frustrating the environment might get. Really leaning back on your purpose helps keep you driving forward.
Okay, awesome. Well, listen, I appreciate your time. Before we end this video, I want to give a quick shout out to today's sponsor, It's me. Your greatest gift, if you are watching this on YouTube, is to like, comment, subscribe, ring the notification bell, and share this content. If you are listening on a podcast platform, please share away. And of course, if you want to buy me a coffee, you can go to Buy Me a Coffee and share a beverage my way. And if you want to purchase one for the guest that I just interviewed, send it my way and I will gift it to that individual. Thank you very much for watching and have a great rest of your day.